every time a political commentator makes a prediction, they should have to post collateral for if they're wrong in that prediction so they stop making stupid predictions over and over again, like Cenk has done for most of the Gaza conflict. Granted, he's 90% right. Most people on the pro-Israel side are morally bankrupt, in my opinion, but he still makes absurd claims, right? Like, even though Smotrich and Ben Gvir aren't even willing to withdraw their parties from the coalition over Gaza annexation or settlement, apparently it's still the mainstream Israeli position to settle Gaza even after the ceasefire. It's just this kind of like cartoonish, total detachment from reality. Like, Israel does not care about Gaza, right? They have a PR to maintain. Do they care about do they care about the Palestinians in Gaza? No. If Gaza was presented to them on a silver plate, would they take it? Of course. Would they settle it? Of course. But they live in a reality of a world that is increasingly not liking them. This is Cenk Uygur completely disregarding all of that on Piers Morgan.
So the number one thing is it has to be fair. So on my side, I go, oh yeah, get Hamas out of Gaza, definitely return the hostages, end the war. I don't want any civilians killed going forward. But Israel has to leave Gaza. They have to actually hold up their end of the deal. And you know, and Dinesh knows, and everybody knows, Israel's not going to leave Gaza because this was never about defense. It was about offense. And they have pictures of greater Israel. And they talk about it. Netanyahu said, hold on, let me just finish this quick thought. Netanyahu has said that it is his historical and spiritual mission to set up greater Israel. That includes Gaza and the West Bank. Why isn't American media honest about that? Why don't they say, oh yeah, the objective of the leader of Israel is to take all of Gaza for Israel. This has nothing to do with self-defense. This is an aggressive imperial war to capture that land. Because it's not me saying it, Netanyahu said it, Ben Gvir said it, Smotrich said it, and they all say that they can countenance the entire annihilation of Gaza. So why doesn't the American government, British government, and our media condemn the world's largest terrorist, which unfortunately today is the Israeli government?
I don't have any issue with people complaining about Israel's expansion and settlement and occupation, but at least try to be correct, right? Just because Putin wants to rebuild the Russian Empire doesn't mean he's going to do it. Just because China wants to take Taiwan doesn't mean they're going to do it, right? It's half domestic politics, half international politics. This is how geopolitics tends to work, right? Don't say this deal is good, but it's actually garbage because they're just going to take the whole land anyways. When you know you're going to be wrong, right? Netanyahu has said stuff like, we're going to conquer Gaza, or he proposed that to his cabinet, but right after that he said he was going to transfer it to an Arab government or whatever. It's not necessarily Netanyahu's prime political directive right now to settle Gaza. That is Smotrich's and Ben Gvir's, at least ideologically, and now not even politically. They've decided it's not even worth it. They're not even going to pull their coalition for it, so they don't obviously believe it that much. It's this kind of cartoonish misportrayal of the other side that makes this conflict so like stupid to talk about. It's just constant. The historicity is so bad. The mischaracterizations are so bad. Calling the IDF the world's largest terrorist is so bad. It's like I can't stand it anymore. Like, even though he's right about everything, I would agree with all of his policies. It's just stupid. Here's another clip from that same thing. Just before this, expounding on why the IDF is the world's largest terrorist and why the IDF has the world's worst civilian kill ratio. Right? Even though terrorists don't operate on civilian kill ratios, but whatever, let's see it.
70 October 7th, an enormous disregard for human life. Isn't an 83% civilian kill ratio literally the very worst in the world? So that means Israel is targeting civilians worse than any other terrorist group in the world right now. Worse than Bashar al-Assad did, worse than Hamas did, and on top of the fact that they kill more civilians on purpose, on average, than any other terrorist group, they then did 70 times.
Again, it's a massive disservice to everybody. It's an insult to my intelligence to hear the idea that the IDF is the world's largest terrorist or a terrorist organization to begin with. That is a horrific indictment of everyone who's in the IDF, many of which are probably perfectly fine people who do search house by house to ensure that they are not killing innocent civilians. And then there are the bombings that are calculated according to a crude, immoral proportionality assessment that account for most of the death toll, right? Why, if Israel is the world's most immoral terrorist group, why have they mobilized 100,000 of their own young men to go into Gaza, right? Why have they even bothered with a humanitarian foundation, right? Why, this stuff does not make any sense. Why bother with leaflets? Why bother with dive bombing? Why bother with any kind of smart bombing? Bashar al-Assad just dropped barrel bombs. He just gassed people. Why did Assad have a lower civilian kill ratio? Because he had to deal with front lines. This is why I oppose this war flat out, because there is no front lines. It's an impossible objective without going into this 83% civilian kill ratio. But when you look at conflicts like Russia-Ukraine or the civil war in Syria, where there's actually two sides fighting each other and it's not one massive game of hide and seek where you're like it's just an intelligence game, really, just figuring out where to bomb and when to bomb. Bashar al-Assad had multiple people attacking him from multiple fronts. He was not concerned with killing civilians. He was concerned with first defending the front lines and then killing civilians who were living in rebel-occupied towns in Syria. And the way he did that was in a way that, in my estimation, is much worse from a war crime perspective than anything Israel has done. He's barrel bombed those whole towns, gassed them. Israel's not done any of that. Most of their bombs have been, besides the 2,000-pound bombs, which is suspect, they've used dive bombing, or they have been tracking bombs. They've been smart bombs. Why bother with hundreds of IDF soldiers being killed? You have zero intelligence. In order to say that the IDF is a terrorist, you must present me with some intelligence that says they were targeting civilians, because you can do that. With Hamas, we know from dead Hamas soldiers on October 7th, they were given orders to kill civilians. At least that's what I've heard. I believe that. I have not looked into it. ISIS says very easily read statements like Israel will be the graveyard of all Jews. They do genocides on the Yazidis in Iraq. It's just so easy to see who's a terrorist and who's not by actual quotes and actual intelligence, not this muddy, like, inference-filled analysis where you have no concrete evidence, right? Stick to what is true if you want to be taken seriously. And people would not take Cenk Uygur seriously because he obviously has no interest. He decided on the moment of, early 2024 that this was a genocide, right? He had no room for maybe considering the idea that, hey, isn't Hamas 1% of the population, and isn't a 83% civilian kill ratio indicative of a 17 times higher rate of killing Hamas than would otherwise be indicated by just like random carpet bombing? Don't you think? So they have to be looking into this somewhat. Like, there has to be some intelligence that goes into these strikes, or else it would be less than 1% militant kill ratio. And by the way, what's the problem with the security perimeter? Isn't that a part of, like, every deal ever when there is, an antagonistic force in one area, and you're supposedly making peace with them, and you don't want to, like, take the chance that they're just gonna, backstab you? I think even Cenk would admit that, if Hamas was given an open opportunity, like, if there was just no military there, no border enforcement, right? A border is a security perimeter. You think about it, it's not much different. This is just more militarized. But wouldn't you just want to have that extra security to make sure that your counterparty is actually following through with the deal? That makes sense. I feel like it would make sense to most, even if they just put a little bit of thought into it. Now, Dinesh, of course, makes the international law argument. And usually Israel loses catastrophically in international law arguments, mostly about the West Bank. But here in this conflict, besides the 3-month starvation campaign and having aid drop to 15% of levels that they should have been in October 2024, they've been okay. There's no evidence that they have done like massive violations of feasible precaution, proportionality, and distinction. But international law is a very low bar. It's a very low bar for me. A conflict must not only follow international law on a technical basis, but it should also, be moral, considering the context, considering the effects of the war, considering the other implications of the war, considering the total human cost of the war. That's why Dinesh is wrong there. That's why people also like Destiny are wrong and Benny Morris, people who I think have a good faith interpretation of the history and then just rely too much on international law to justify a conflict that will do nothing but regress to total conflict in its entirety.